Hello, good evening. Hello, uh, uh, good evening, everybody, and thanks for joining for today's UX talk. Uh, so today we have very interesting speaker with us, uh, and so let's start with introduction with him. So I will before that I will start on we can start on our topic. So today we have Alipta Balo from Bangalore. He joined. Hi, Alipta. For uh,
Hi Tushar, how are you?
I'm fine. Hope things are great at Bangalore. So today we are talking on disabilities in design. So that is something today is very interesting topic we have. So Alipta is a very senior person. He is a mentor. Uh, you can find him his articles on Medium also, and even on the UX Planet. He has published his articles. He is associated with a lot of with mentoring people across the India and across the globe also. So he's very much experienced in user experience design, and I'm happy that today he has given us valuable time for UX community, and hopefully today we will bring something value addition for uh, 1 minute. Best everybody. Thanks. Uh, so today's session will be very insightful for everybody. People are joining, so we can continue on topic. So before I will hand over to Alipta, just let me have 2 minutes to talk about UX talk itself. So UX talk, as many people know, I am looking at Delhi. People are joined. They are very uh, many people I see here who are regular UX talk. They join. Thanks for their time. And UX talk basically intention behind UX talk is to give awareness about UX. And there is a lot of misconception about UX. It is only UX or UI or tools. So I'm trying to bring different subjects in the user experience so that uh, we should understand what is the potential about UX and where we are going from,
São os indianos todos.
uh, where we are today, and in future where we are going in our design. Okay, so UX talk we have started in March. Now we have good number of speakers. In in November, December also we have good topics and good speaker are coming on board. After December, we are planning some physical activities, some workshops, and I'm happy there are few already. Our good speakers, they have we have started some workshop activity. Hopefully, so intention of UX talk is purpose is just to give and more awareness about user experience at subject itself. So I will hand over now, Alpita. You can start on today's topic. But before we start on core topic, I have one request. So you can start with just giving us your introduction, little bit of your journey, because I believe everyone's journey is very inspirational for everyone. So today you are as a mentor. So how you started the design career, and how was how was entire so that will be have some for participants, get something to learn in that also, and definitely then we can start our core topic. If you have any questions, please participants, I will just request mute your microphone so that speaker will did not get any disturbance. And if you have any questions, you can use chat option for our Zoom. You can put a chat in that questions if any questions immediate if you have. And once we have complete the presentation and the topic, we will definitely try to take some questions so that Alpida will answer those questions. Okay. Thanks everybody once again. Starting for today's evening, and so Yeah, Alpita, you can start with your introduction and little bit about your journey, and we can. I've given you share option, and you can start.
Yeah, okay. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Great, awesome. Thank you, Tushar. Thanks for the nice introduction about me. So I'll quickly share my screen so that I can tell you a bit about myself. Just one sec. Just one sec.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Just one sec. There's some issue here. Yeah. Okay. So good evening to all of you. I am not sure if anyone is from outside India, and if you are from outside India, and good morning and good afternoon to all of you. So today's topic is about designing the web for disabilities. My name is Olip Ballo, and this is a topic which is very close to my heart, and I think this topic requires some exposure within the design community. And with that, let me introduce myself. So I am Alipta Ballav. I am a senior design manager at Sonar. So Sonar basically is a healthcare IT firm. It is headquartered in Kansas City, US. I live in Bangalore, and I'm married. I have a daughter who is just in the first standard now. So a little bit about my career background. I'm a D school graduate. I started my career way back in '98. I know those days web designer and web developer, graphic designers used to be those popular job titles. So I'm from that part of the world where I used to handle a lot of graphic designing things for my team, and then slowly I started understanding about web development, a bit of into coding, and then JavaScripting and all those stuff. And then later I moved into user experience. So I moved to Bangalore, and these are some of the companies I worked for. My first company in Bangalore was Wipro. No, before that I was a part of Logica CMG for some time, and then I moved to Harman. So all this over the years, I've been into multiple. I've actually had to wear multiple hats. Sometimes as a designer, sometimes as an interaction designer, visual designer, sometimes also as a design manager. And this is the current role I'm playing. I'm a senior design manager in Sonar, and I lead the experience design team at Sonar India. So that's a brief about me. And with that, let me also tell you one more thing which I did during this pandemic session is I completed many unfinished project. I never used to find time because I was too busy with my work at office. So what I did during this pandemic is I became a part of several designing communities, and I also got the opportunity to mentor some budding designers. And these are some of the design communities I'm a part of at the moment: Rethinking UX, Indian Design Academy, UMO Design, Think Design Collaborative, and also is Tushar at the moment. And I've been also mentoring as a designer in some of these hackathons, right? MIT COVID Challenge, and then MIT Hacking Medicine. So these are some of the other things I actually did during this pandemic. Okay, so let me jump over the topic quickly. So, disability is a state of mind. So we have to understand what goes in on the mind of a person who faces it, right? And how he perceives it. So I'm going to share a story with you. It's not a story; it's a fact. It's something which I'm going to talk about my friend. So my friend Kaushik, he lives in Kolkata. So in the year 2002, on the way back from back home from work, he made a severe accident, and his chances of survival was very less. He was driving a motorcycle on a flyover, and he was hit by a truck from behind, and he fell down from that 30-foot flyover directly on the ground. And he had severe injuries. He had spinal cord injuries, liver got damaged, its leg got damaged, multiple injuries, and he was temporarily disabled. He stayed in the hospital for 6 long months, but he still fought the battle and he survived. Today he's happily married with a kid. So what I'm trying to say here is you either choose to lose the battle or win it, right? So likewise in the field of life, so there are many people with disabilities who have succeeded in their own way, isn't it? So let's look at some of the quick examples. So this is Indian cricket team 2018 physically challenged Indian cricket team. They won the Alan Border Cup, making India proud. And these are some of the quick names I can tell you. Sudha Chandran, an Indian classical dancer. She met up with an accident and she lost her leg, but she did not lose her hope, and she actually got an artificial leg, and with that artificial leg, she was able to continue her journey. Arunima Sinha also met with an unfortunate accident and lost her leg. So her leg was amputated and a rod was inserted into the knee to hold the bones together. So, with a strong willpower, she decided to climb the Everest, and she actually got succeeded in doing that. Stephen Hawkins, a well-known personality, right, in academics, a recipient of numerous awards, and despite being challenged by motor neuron disease, he was one of the most admired scientists, right, in physics. And his famous black hole theory, we all know about it. So sometimes some situations you can come across in life which really makes you disabled, sometimes temporarily and sometimes permanently, isn't it? Okay, so
स्कोबारच्या बिल्डिंग मध्ये वन प्लस सर्व्हिस सेंटर आहे कुठं
I feel disabled
हो का
in this situation.
वन प्लस सर्व्हिस सेंटर टीएस
So I feel disabled in this situation. I'm trying to hold a cup, I'm trying to hold a bottle in my left hand with a laptop, and I'm also talking to the phone. So I'm completely disabled in this situation. So there are certain situations where you're partying, a lot of noise around, and you cannot hear a phone call, and situations like this really make you temporarily disabled, isn't it? And let's say your eyes are dilated at the doctor's, and you have visited a eye doctor, and your eyes got dilated, and you're blindish for a few hours. So likewise, there are many situations which can make you feel temporarily disabled, and I feel COVID-19 is also a situation, isn't it? So I think digital accessibility become more important than ever before now, because many people are relying on digital service for different day-to-day activities, right? Which include shopping, remote working, and also education. My kid is actually having online education these days. Also for healthcare, banking, and multiple other things, right? So I think if you have accessible design digital system, it provides a method to protect people with disabilities from getting the infection. So you don't need to step out for grocery to pick up the groceries, or you don't need to step out for to go and get your medicines, right? Or you don't even know to go to the ATM to withdraw money. So it's all digital. But again, the systems has to be accessible, right? So if these digital services or systems are not accessible, I mean, and you cannot maintain social distancing, I think COVID-19 will spread rapidly, isn't it? So I'm not specifically talking about COVID-19 here, but when it comes to situational disability, these are some of the possible accommodations you can probably think of. One situational constraint can be, let's say you have a poor lighting and the display is very small, and you have some functional limitation like blindness. So what do? You probably make the text size or the font size larger, right? Now, there can be other stuff, right? There's some distractions present, and you are probably having some cognitive impairment, or there's a lot of pop-ups coming on. Then you can probably have a simplified navigation in place. So likewise, if you have noisy environment, you have hard of hearing, you can probably think of having captioning or text equivalent. And if you don't have mouse available and the functional limitation is your mobility constraints, you can probably rely on keyboard, right? So in this image, you can find UX and accessibility both are converging to a point, right? So let's look at this. This is accessibility and this is UX. So when it comes to UX and accessibility together, I think both overlap and both are actually the vital parts of user experience. And I think both should coexist and complement each other, right? But when it comes to objective measures of UX, these are some of the things we normally do. Usability, let's say. We talk about ease of use, right? We talk about efficiencies, effectiveness, satisfaction, and stuff like that. And then you have engagement. You can probably talk about Google Heart Framework. It's a good way to measure engagement, right? And also when you talk about conversion, there could be like direct visitors, search visitors, referral visitors, and multiple things, right? You can probably look into the bounce rate, exit pages, and whether whether the users actually make the purchase, right? And there are also ways to understand how your system is performing. You can probably have SUS, system usability score. You can probably have NPS, Net Promoter Score. You can even have CSAT, customer satisfaction score. But don't you think something is missing here? Yes, definitely. Where is accessibility? We don't have accessibility here, right? And look at some of the facts. Roughly 1.14 billion people in the globe live with a disability. And this is a fact, and the number is huge, isn't it? So in spite of knowing about the fact, I think we ignore accessibility into our design process. And there are laws which kind of mandates that. You have ADA, American Disabilities Act, we have Section 508, we have WCAG. So ADA actually has a larger scope. They just don't talk about the web, but also has a larger picture of accessibility. And one example could be that trying to add a braille buttons in the lift, right? Or making a braille watch, or even if you're designing a park, a restroom, or even a grocery store. So ADA looks into that. When it comes to Section 508, it is mostly talks about digital information, making your digital information accessible. And when it comes to WCAG, Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, so there is a set of guidelines to make the web accessible. And there are different performance levels, right? You have A, which is like basic accessibility. You have AA, intermediate accessibility, and AAA, advanced. So AAA is something which you can never achieve. There are a lot of things which cannot be achieved, to your point, but normally we try to achieve AA all the time, right? And you also have country-specific laws. Australia have Disability Discrimination Act. New Zealand has government web standards, and then India also has an act and guidelines for Indian government websites. Japan has their own guidelines, the Netherlands, and then United Kingdom. Okay, so this is a web accessibility lawsuit file report in the federal court. I think in 2018 it has increased considerably. 177% increase over 2017, right? And in 2019 there has been decrease of 0.9% because suddenly the design community has started looking into accessibility. But I think that is still not considerable in nature. You actually, as being a designer, I think we still have to work a lot towards make our web content or our applications accessible. So what is required? You know, or rather I would say why it is required. 1 in 5 residents in America are expected to be 65 or older by 2030. Really matter of concern, right? So I think with age also comes a lot of physical disabilities, motor disabilities, cognitive disabilities, and also our own Terminator and Rocky Balboa are getting old too, right? Isn't it? So we definitely have to look after them too, and we have to make our digital system accessible in nature. But how to make it accessible? So it's very simple. Design web pages in a way or design applications in a way so that users with disabilities doesn't have problems interacting with the page or for your applications. So it should give an equal opportunity and access to everyone, whether you have disability or whether you do not have disability. With that, I come to the agenda for today's topic. So there are 3 things I'll be covering today. One is how do you fit accessibility into the design process? I'll be also talking about disability types and how you design for each of those disability types. Okay, so this is a typical user-centered design process. In the discovery phase, we try to understand users, what are the different user groups or goals they have, what are the different pain points they have. We try to understand the project scope and the timelines, the technology stack involved, and then also while you try to understand the personas and try to understand the functional flow, we as a designer also try to come up with a very conceptual flow. It's a very high level flow of the application, right? Similarly, in the design phase, we create lo-fi sketches, and then you try to get an early feedback on the sketches. Right? We do a quick round of testing with our end users, and we also post that testing. Whatever feedback we receive from those end users, we try to incorporate them, and then we try to create a high-five wireframes, right? And then we kind of iterate and finalize on the actual end user flow. In the development stage, we then create spec and pass it to the development team, and the developers actually integrate to the system. They come up with a lot of challenges. They say this is not possible, that is not possible to integrate, and again you have to iterate, right? And then you also do an accessibility audit, post development, post integration. You do an accessibility audit, and post that you also do summative testing, which is kind of a benchmark testing. And this actually completes the entire user-centered design process. And this is a very high-level overview I've given. There are multiple steps where you have missed out. I'm not getting into that detail, but overall, I think this gives an enough idea about how the user-centered design process actually looks, isn't it? Now, I'm going to emphasize on what role a UX designer plays in fitting accessibility into the design process. And one of the definite things which you normally do is to understand users, right? So when you try to do the discovery findings, these are some of the findings we might get. In my company, I always get this kind of thing. So I get to know the end users rely on keyboard. They use the screen readers to access content. Some users have color blindness, and some have difficulty in remembering a step. and some users have difficulty in hearing. So what to do in the design stage as UX designer? So these are some of the points we normally consider in the design phase of our accessibility considerations, right? So we create low-fi sketches and also high-fi sketches. While you do that, you also try to make sure that these points are covered. So consistent identification is one of them. So I think components that have the same functionality within a set of web pages are identified consistently, right? Then we have consistent navigation and page layout, correct? Error suggestions. Sometimes a mandatory field also requires the data to be in specific format, but then you have to notify the user that it has to be in specific format. You also look after the minimum color contrast, right, ratios. You also do not convey information only with color. Web pages or windows should have meaningful titles that describe purposes, right? And all icons basically have labels, except the universal ones, like universal icons. Like the printing icon is an universal icon. So for that, you don't need to have labels. But for the other ones, you need to have labels. So these are the things as a designer I should consider in our design phase. Now, in the development phase, what do we do? So you also validate. So while you do that accessibility audit, you also validate as a designer whether my alternate text has some meaningful alternate text, right? So these are some of the validations we do. Whether if skip links are there to bypass content blocks, the link text should describe this purpose without needing to have an additional content for that. And also text can be resized to 200% without loss of content or functionality, right? And also content is accessible via keyboard and screen readers. And the last part is taken care by the developers. Use semantic code, and they also use WARIA to make your JavaScript or dynamic content accessible, right? So this probably completes. What I'm trying to tell you is how does accessibility fits in the design process, and how, as a designer, what are the things we need to do uh, in this entire process. So now I'm going to talk about disability types and how we design for them. So remember, in our discovery phase, we have end users who have motor disabilities and they rely on keyboard. Now, which means that this person have motor impairment. Now, what are different types of motor impairment? So we have spinal cord injury, we have loss of damaged limb, you have arthritis, Parkinson's disease, cerebral palsy, essential tremors. There are multiple others. This is not an exhaustive list again. There could be multiple other motor impairment types. But as a designer, what you're supposed to do, we have to make sure that any users will be able to access the web page or the application what you're designing via keyboard. And that's the bare minimum. So look at this person. She is able to draw using her feet quite nicely. I know she must be having a lot of difficulty in her daily life, but she's still able to fulfill some of her aspirations, right? So she's drawing with her feet, right? Similarly, look at this person. These two image depicts that one person actually using a mouse stick to press on the keyboard, and the other actually using a head stick to press on the keyboard, right? Through these mechanisms, they're trying to access information. I mean, it's quite painful and it's quite difficult for them. Now, what do you do as designers? How do you design for motor impairments, right? So as I was telling you, people with motor impairment have difficulty using their hand, or they may not be able to hold on the mouse properly. And for that same reason, we have to enable keyboard navigation, right? You have to give a logical tab order to all your navigational items. It could be from left to right, top to bottom, or whichever appropriate, right? But also you have to consider while you're using these shortcut keys or whatever tab order or logical shortcut keys you're using, that should not also conflict with your assistive device or browser functions, because sometimes it conflicts. And you should also check whether you can able to skip link to navigate to your content. And these users might also be using voice as a medium of registering input, right? And also your target has to be larger enough. So these are some of the points you need to consider while designing for motor impairments. Now, in the discovery phase, you also have seen that we have end users who use screen readers to access content and also have color blindness, which means that that particular user has visual impairment, right? Now, this is again a quick fact. So it is estimated that 4.5% of the global population experience color blindness, and 4% suffers from low vision, right? Now, what are the different types of visual impairments? You have low vision, which means your vision is not that sharp. You have tunnel vision. You have central vision loss. You can also have clouded vision. You can also have color blindness, which means you have difficulty distinguishing between color, red or green, yellow, blue, and sometimes you also have inability to perceive any color, right? And the other one is complete blindness. So you have substantial loss of vision in both the eyes, right? And this is an example of low vision. So when you have central vision loss, this is how you see a thing. So you kind of see a dot in your central vision, and this is a peripheral vision loss. So all your surroundings are kind of blacked out, and you can really see the content through your central vision. And this is a clouded vision, which is kind of little blurred. You cannot see much. Now, this is also this example talks about color blindness. So this is a normal vision, right? You can see all the colors. But if you have a red and green color blindness, you call it deuteranopia. You can have you can only you cannot see red and green color, but other colors are visible to you. Similarly, you can have protanopias, which means you have reduced sensitivity to red light. Look at this image. There's no red light here. It's only blue, yellow, and green, right? And then you have pretanopia, which means you have blue or yellow color blindness. So you cannot see yellow here at all. It's all reddish and some kind of bluish texture is there. So these are different types of color blindness people might have. And as a designer, you have to look into all of this while you choose your colors in your design. Okay, can someone try out this? Are you colorblind? This is a quick test. Anybody wants to volunteer for this? Can you see what is written? Anyone?
Hello.
Yep.
Yes, I can see it.
Yep.
So it's 7, then 42, then 74, then 10, then 2.
Awesome, man. You're not a colorblind in that case, so you don't need to go to the doctor. Nice. Thank you so much for that. Thanks for volunteering. Great.
You're welcome, sir.
Okay, so and this is low. This is zero vision. Like this all blacked out, so you can't see anything. So, but how do you design for visual impairment? So there are different ways to do it. So, and because these visual impairment users, they mostly rely on screen readers. These are some of the points you need to consider. You have to write descriptive alternate text, descriptive page titles and headers, and you also make sure that you should not simply rely on color to convey information, right? The text is fully readable at 200% of its original size, and also you need to maintain a color contrast ratio of 4:5. 4.5:1 for normal text, and 3:1 for larger text. And also content should be clear and precise, and provide notification and to dynamic update of content. Again, I'm saying these are not a very exhaustive list in nature, but these are some of the points you can really consider while and again, this is bare minimum. So there are a lot of other things you probably have to do, but this is a bare minimum you have to do while you design for visual impairment, because these visual impairment users are normally rely on screen readers or braille keyboard to access content, right? Okay, so now as I was talking about alternate text, right? How best could you describe this image? Can someone volunteer for this again? Anyone? No? Okay, I think the recommended, so I think even if you write image of a dog, it would pass the accessibility audit, right? But again, that does not, that alternate text is not very descriptive in nature, right? Now, if you say something like this, a dog wrapped inside a blanket and sitting on a carpet, this probably might give you some context to that image, right? And users might create a mental map in their mind. Okay, this is an image I'm looking at. Uh, though I'm not looking at it visually, but yes, this is something I'm really observing at this point of time, right? Similarly, this is also dangerous. Like as I was telling you in the earlier example, example of color only to conveying error information. So I see only colors. So probably if users who have who cannot use red as a color, they'll not be able to understand. Okay, there are some errors which I've committed in this form, right? So this is a dangerous thing to do, and this is not at all recommended. And that's why, as a global standard, you always use asterisk while you notify users from any kind of error messages, right? Okay, so coming back to the next disability type, again, we have discovered that we have end users who have difficulty in remembering a step, right? And definitely the user might be having cognitive impairment. Now, I'll tell you one quick thing. Now, what happens to me when it comes to cognitive impairment? You know, last week I was preparing a presentation for the leadership team. I was trying to recall this word, attrition. But I struggled almost for the entire day. And also, sometimes my wife tells me to buy 5 items from the grocery store, and I come back buying only 3 items. And it goes without saying that my wife's yell at me, and I probably suffer from mild cognitive impairment. I'm not sure. I've not gone to the doctor, but looks like I do have. And this happens to me when I forget those groceries items. Okay, so coming to cognitive impairment types. Somebody is firing crackers. There's some sound pollution happening here. Please bear with me. Maybe somebody is celebrating his birthday. I'm sorry for that. Anyway, so coming back to the topic, cognitive impairment types. We have attention deficit disorder, which involves difficulty on focusing on a single task. There's also a learning disability. Probably I'm unable to learn a particular interaction type, right? So cognitive disability comes with grows with age, right? And then we probably have a lot of obstacles to learning, memory. Your memory becomes weak when you grow older, and your attention shifts from one thing to another. So you also have memory impairments, as I mentioned here, which involve limited short-term memory, long-term memory, and you probably cannot recall anything at a certain point of time. You probably cannot remember the password. Now, this is one point I think where both usability and accessibility actually converge, right? And you have to accommodate memory deficits, attention deficits, visual comprehension deficits, right? So, our own Harry Potter, Daniel Radcliffe, was having dyslexia. So he was having difficulty tying his shoes or writing a thank you note. So probably if you don't know, this is an information I am sharing with you. And so this is an user, Emily, finds it difficult to focus on tasks, particularly when a web page has multiple pop-up windows, right? So Emily has attention shifts. And she doesn't know which one to go for. Now, what do you do? As a designer, what are different things you should consider while designing for cognitive impairments? And these are some of the things. So navigation is one of them. So you need to have a standard and consistent navigation. You need to have a proper labeling of information, like the button level. Sometimes you have yes or no. Sometimes you have save or cancel. So it has to be considered across the application, right? So you can probably use breadcrumbs for navigation and probably side maps. When it comes to layout, remove redundant elements and make use of white space. Reduce the clutter as much as possible. Highlight the most important information upfront, and also use high contrast colors. Right. When it comes to content and text, use plain language. You probably can chunk the materials. So you can probably use bulleted list, and you can use meaningful headings. When it comes to functionality, built on existing user knowledge, this is very important because users comes to the knowledge when they interact with softwares, and they expect that this particular software with they're interacting with also work with the same way, and this is actually called users mental model. So we have to also optimize the search facilities, because this is one very prominent navigation people actually interact with your application. And also provide definitions and explanations for unusual or technical terms, right? When it comes to multimedia, I think you should present information in multiple modes, like you can have video, you can have audio, you can have textual information. Use graphics and recognizable icons, as I was telling you. If you're using icons which are not universal in nature, always add labels to that. And also use very familiar imagery so that it can aid memory retention. So these are some of the points. Again, these are not very exhaustive in nature, but some of the points which I think are very important while you design for cognitive impairments. And also we have end users who have difficulty in hearing, right? And we have auditory impairment. So when it comes to auditory impairment, people have hard of hearing. They have mild or moderate hearing impairments in both the ears. They can have substantial uncorrectable impairment of hearing in both the ears. Sometimes they are deaf. They are also sometimes deaf and blind, right? Now, what do you do as a designer in this? So auditory impairment actually relies on sign languages, right? So there are two global standards here. We have British Sign Language, BSL, and we have American Sign Languages called ASL, which serves as a predominant way of communication within these deaf communities. And this is an example of a sign language. So a person who is completely deaf, these are some of the sign languages you can probably use. Okay, so each phono represents an alphabet. And we also have something like this. So how do you say who, how do you say what? And again, this is not exhaustive. These are some of the ways to interact with a person. For a person who is completely deaf, these are some of the sign languages they use, right? Now let's look at a small video. There's no audio here, so don't worry, guys. So I don't think you're able to understand anything, any bit of it, right? But people who are belonging to the deaf community, they'll probably understand this. And so until you have subtitles, you cannot understand, right? Great. So I was just watching a Netflix series sometime back. It was a Chinese web series, and luckily it has got subtitles. So subtitles are very important, right? So how to design for auditory impairments? It's quite simple. You can probably use, as I was mentioning in the video, uh, you have to use captions. Use simple language so that it is easy for me to understand. I can pretty easily navigate that. And also you can probably use multiple interaction at times. You can probably use gestures and multiple other things. Okay, so can you remember this? I mean, this seems like someone is saying this is awesome, but according to the deaf communities, this denotes F. Great. I think, yeah, that's about it. I think I'm in the final few slides are left for today's presentation. My final thoughts are, again, web is a very promising medium, and it can solve many problems for all of us, especially for a person with disability. I think as a designer, we think that there's a lot of work to be done there. I can still see people with disabilities and having accessibility, are having difficulty accessing web page on an application. And also these days, especially during the pandemic, we are very much dependent on web to perform a lot of tasks. Some daily tasks like paying bills, checking bank balance, all those, ordering groceries, money transfer, and even for entertainment, right? So I think there are laws which can mandate that. But I think as a designer also, we need to strictly adhere to the guidance and make our design inclusive in nature. So with that, I think Paul Bog has rightly said, accessibility is not about designing for the few, it is designing for us all, right? With that, I'm saying thank you. And thanks for being here. Thank you so much. Over to Tushar.
Yeah, sorry. So yeah, thank Alexa. That is very insightful, and I'm sure many designers got at least they get a sense about what is the very importance of a disability studies or accessibility in their their design. Even when we design any product or when we design any website or application, so we have to do that user research. So for that, what are things we can take care about this community where we can use equal access, because in design principle we talk about equity and flexibility. So that equal access, so that, like, as I'm a good healthy person, so I'm using any applications the same way, we try to give same chance, the fair chance for other people who are unfortunate, so with some disabilities. So let's take few questions here. I
Sure.
think uh, I think we have a couple of questions here. So I think Lekki, if I pronounce correct, so how we can make things virtual reality systems accessible to user with disabilities, and what kind of issues the designer and developers will face?
Okay. When it comes to virtual reality, I probably don't have much knowledge on that domain because I've not explored it very much in that domain. But my focus has been mostly into web applications and desktop based applications. So when it comes to virtual reality, I uh, I hope that the standards are same, but I am not sure whether there's any specific guidelines or some kind of principles which we normally consider while designing for these kind of users. Because let's say motor disability person, he or she may not have, if he's getting into a virtual reality system, he or may not be having difficulty in grasping that that thing. But I'm not sure on this basically. So I have to probably find an answer to this because I've not really worked on this space. I did not explore this space.
Sure, great. I think we have a question from Nitin. So
Mhm.
is there any research going on sign languages to speech or text conversion apps? So maybe he is asking like sign language, we can some way we can convert into some some communicable sign or language.
Yeah, I think definitely that's a good point here. I think sign languages, if you can, I think I've read one paper. I don't remember it some time back. I think sign language definitely they're trying to translate it into some kind of an interaction. So if you are using a sign, probably that can. I think that was happening probably in Zoom. There's one maybe Google research. Sometime I was watching a video where they're saying that if 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 I say this, I've been that means I'm saying wait for the moment, or if I'm saying this, I mean I'm okay, I can hear you. So I'm seeing whenever my kid actually uses his use Zoom for an online training. She normally uses the sign languages to make a teacher understand. Okay, I'm able to see your screen, right? And then she said, okay, I want to go to the toilet. So all those sign languages probably definitely is becoming more popular day by day because of this virtual world. But I'm not. There's definitely research going on there, and hopefully something might come up. As a guideline in the future, in the near future.
Right. So definitely people are maybe researching.
Right. Right.
And I think there is a lot of opportunity for young designers. If there is nothing, so they can enter and they can bring something for the community. So we have
Correct. Correct.
from Aman, it is he's asking what if person is having two or multiple disabilities?
Sorry. What is?
If person is having two or multiple two or many disabilities, if that person has
Hmm.
not only one type, maybe or two, three types together, then what?
Hmm. So there can be a combination, right? One might have motor disability, and plus he might also have visual disability. And then what do you do at this moment, right? So when it comes to motor disability, we normally rely on keyboard, right, to make the content accessible. But again, if the same person might have visual disability, he might also need to have uh, uh, rely on the screen reader completely. So the combination of these two might work out for him well when you're designing applications for them. I'm not sure whether this answers this question, but this is probably an outlier where so we normally we do check. Okay, these are the different disability types and what are the accommodations available for these disability types. But sometimes if a user has multiple disabilities, if as I said, blindness and motor, maybe there could be other ways to make the content accessible for him, right?
Yeah. Yes. So maybe we have to find out more solutions.
Correct, exactly, right, exactly. But good questions, thank you so much. These
On,
are actually food for thoughts.
yes, definitely. So Nitu has she is asking any online resource available to get more information. I think Nitu, you can follow Alipta or me or on this talk. We definitely will post something on LinkedIn, so you can get resources there. Uh, so Sanchita has a question. As a UX designer, keeping in mind the inclusion of a design in a healthcare, uh, we need to consider all the disabilities like cognitive motor impairment. Uh, if yes, then where and how to start in design? Is there any priority?
Okay, this is a good question. So Sanchita, I actually come from a healthcare background, and I can probably answer this question for you. So basically, as I was telling you, this is the whatever design process I've showed you here in my slides. So that is exactly follow in Cerner. because Cerner actually works for US government, and we have to make our applications mandated uh, for all disability types, meaning we have to make our application accessible in nature so that it covers all the set of users. It's not just one disability, like cognitive, as I mentioned, cognitive, visual, motor, then auditory, and stuff like that. So the thing is, there's nothing as I'm taking priority of one disability over the other. So while we are designing, we are considering all the principles and all the design guidelines to make our content accessible. Right? So we are not like giving importance to one particular disability and then uh, giving preference to one disability type and not giving preference to the other. So that's not the case. So this is something we normally follow as a process, and before releasing our applications, we normally do a very stringent check whether it has passed all the accessibility audits. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely, because we cannot give that priority for, so that will
Correct,
be
correct, yes.
for one disability. So yeah, Francisco is asking again one interesting question. Would you recommend that we focus on meeting all the recommendations for a single disability class, or that we can make a basic adjustment to all of them? So again, I think similar lines the question is.
So this is a good question. So the thing is, as I was mentioning, WCAG has different conformance levels, right? You have level A, level AA, level AAA. Now, if you cannot achieve level AAA, because if you try to achieve that application will really look like a document. It's a Word document for you. I mean, you cannot get into that extent, but you really have to understand what is possible for you and what are the guidelines you want to cover for your application or for your products. So I think keeping that in mind, you can uh, probably pick up whatever is necessary for your user groups. So I think that really answers. I hope that answers your question, right?
Right. I think yes. Okay. Anyone have some questions? Yes. Alita, I have one more question for you from my
Sure,
side.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, see, as you said correctly, the disability is again as core subject, or you like on work on that subject. Similarly,
Mhm.
in my case also, I'm very much for every product I ask customer, many times we as a company or as a product developer or a designer, at one point we want to use these norms to be in our design or product, but what if our client, and because see, people particularly in Indian community or Indian this subcontinent, we have client mindset. They are not even ready to they negotiate for your normal design development, and when you ask them,
Mhm.
yes, we have to do something extra, then there is a big question come about, okay, this will cost for me, okay, and then how much you spend time, so doing user research and everything, that is definitely a know how you find out disabilities and but how, so do you find this problem with dealing with customers too, because they have to understand first, because their product should be have this kind of a facilities for this special audience or end users. So what is your take on this particular? How
Yeah,
you
that's what. So thank you, Tushar. This is a good point. So that's why I started my presentation by saying that this is one area which requires a lot of attention, right? And we designers, not just we designers, I would say, because I would say stakeholders who normally give us a project or who develop these products, so they normally ignore this piece. Accessibility is still is mostly an ignored piece in the entire design process. Now there could be multiple constraints. There could be issues with budget, or there could be issues like where they said, okay, we don't have any users who would be actually using our application. We don't have any disabled users who are really using them. But the thing is, the law mandates that every public-facing application, according to American Disability Act, it mandates that every public-facing application should be accessible compliant. Now, and there have been cases like I think there are different federal lawsuits happen over the past where people are unable to access content and they filed that they won the case. So I think the basic accessibility should be considered, right? Like the basic accessibility should be like if you can access your content via keyboard, or if you can at least make your content, color contrast ratios has to be checked properly, or maybe you can make your content accessible by a screen reader, right? So I think these basic things should be met. But as I said again, there's a lot to be done in this phase.
Right.
Designers are really ignoring. I've seen in my experiences where designers hardly consider accessibility compliance. They just create the code and they publish it, but that should not be the case. So I think, Tushar, the thing is, we as a design community, we should step up and make this as a standard, right?
Right. Right. I think that's what actually we are in future we can work together and many things as a design community. Okay? So it is not
Correct.
about, I think to give a consideration for disabilities, it should not be like we are doing something extra. So it should be our part of a process itself. Okay?
Correct, exactly.
Customer should not tell us, you do these things. Okay, that is our part of a job. So whenever you design, whenever you do research, you have to follow these norms. And
Absolutely.
if client is not agree on that, then it is our job, our sales team job, our project managers. They have to step up here and they try to convince them. I think
Correct.
great sessions, and hopefully, I think audience have found out a lot of things. No, from and maybe from next like from tomorrow onwards, even if they think, even if they start their Photoshop or even if they start HTML. So as you correctly said, they have to cement a simple alt text. Okay? So I think your content writer is your best friend always. I always said as a UX designer, your content writer, instead of putting just simple labels, okay, you can, if you don't have a language, if you have a language problem, then basically you can discuss with your team and you can. So once again, thanks and thanks for this time and hopefully again and everybody thanks for this. So we have a next UX talk on 15. So this is by David Fusher. He's from Germany and he is talking on how on user engagement basically from a business point of view. Uh, so thanks once again. Do keep in touch. Do watch. Do follow me in Alipta on LinkedIn for because I have still read Alipta's articles on Medium and UX Planet. So please watch. Please follow, and maybe I think definitely you will get more information from there. And hopefully we are working on some other engagements also. So kind of a workshop we'll see and we'll post soon so that we get more insight on various UX subjects. Okay, thanks once again and good night, good morning, and yeah,
Thank you,
thanks,
everyone.
Philip. This is nice discussion.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.